And then you saw this 22-year-old lady, Miss Brooks, with her mother. You knocked her to the ground and you tried the same offense again, right?
She wasn't with her mother, but yes.
Still a 22-year-old lady. Still somebody that you knocked to the ground, put a gun to her head, did the same thing again. Right? Say that you were going over 100 miles an hour in an effort to evade them. Right?
I don't remember nothing as much long.
Definitely well in excess of the speed limit, correct? You're doing everything you could to get away from it. Right?
Sure.
Just like today, you're doing everything you can to try to make sure you get probation, as opposed to, I'm going to ask this judge to give you 15 years, right?
The parties have rested the presentation of evidence. The court has the pre-sentence report that has been submitted by the probation office and admitted without objections. And the court has considered also the several letters, character letters that have been submitted on behalf of the defendant, which are 8. I see 8 in number. All right. Arguments by the parties. What are you asking for, please? State.
Judge, I think it's clear that I'm asking for the 15 years. I think that I feel for his mom, and I understand the pastor and what his going is. I can't even begin to imagine what that 4 and 1-year-old have thought since the incident. I agree with my complainants on the scenario, having talked with Mr. Parker as well as Ms. Brooks, and I think that they're absolutely right that it would be a mistake to give this man the second opportunity that he's asking for, which is in truth more than that.
Criminal sanctions and penalties are essentially based upon 2 factors: the circumstances of the crime and criminal history. But there's also a third factor, and that is the life of a defendant. And here, what the court finds most compelling is that in the commission of this crime, it's already been pointed out that you assaulted 2 people, and both of them were threatened and in fear of their life by you, who has no authority to do that. You don't take God's will into your hands. And when you have a loaded firearm, and it was loaded, wasn't it?
No, sir, it wasn't loaded.
I'm sorry. What did you just say to me?
It wasn't loaded, Your Honor.
Sir?
It was not loaded, Your Honor.
You're looking at me, and I'm about to sentence you and make a decision, and you just told me it was not loaded? All right, let me read the report to you. Maybe you just screwed up. Because, sir, this is your life. Underneath the Charger's driver's seat, you were in a Charger, right?
It's John.
On the floorboard, in plain view, was a dark brown Glock with a laser attachment, just like the lady said, underneath the barrel. The Glock had 1 magazine inside with 10 9mm rounds. Shame on you. To look me in the eye and just bold-faced try to fool me? Is that what this all is? A charade?
But no, Your Honor. It's not.
You assaulted a woman, didn't have to. You assaulted a woman, had a loaded gun. What are you bringing a loaded gun to robberies for? Unless you intend to use it, sir. And then the man in front of his children, his little children. And the 1-year-old may not ever remember, but the 4-year-old, I remember when I was 4, certain occasions that were traumatic. We all do. You're the source of that horror for that child. Plus, again, you have a gun, and they really didn't know it was loaded, but when you point a gun at somebody and threaten them, they're going to assume their life is a clock's tick away. You have the power, which our Creator doesn't give you. You forced it on fellow humans, God's creatures. As we want to bring this up, how religious. You've been going to church for a long time, but yet you are here by a cacophony, a product of bad choices that defy your education in high school, that defy your upbringing and church going, that defy military. All of those are methods of helping people to make the best choices they can make. And after all of that, you put multiple people in harm's way. Here, your attorney has fashioned with the state, has fashioned a limit where you have reduced your exposure for 2 violent first-degree felonies from life imprisonment to a maximum of 15 years in prison, well before you're 30 years of age, essentially ruining the lives of at least two sets of people. Because I know what is told to me. They wake up with the horror of this experience their whole life. Because they are not in control of their life. You were in control, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're all in this together. Live honestly, harm no one, give each person their rightful due. That's everything about law. And that's everything about religion. All wrapped up in those 3 concepts, which all 3 were shattered here by your action. All right, I'm going to find in each of these cases you have pleaded guilty voluntarily. You were mentally competent to do so. You understood the consequences of pleading guilty. There was sufficient evidence supporting your guilty pleas from State's Exhibit 1 admitted in each of these cases. To support your guilty plea, to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, I now find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in each of these cases. And I am following the agreements. You are hereby sentenced to confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve a term of 15 years on each case to run concurrently. The judgment shall show an affirmative finding that a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, was used in the commission of each of these crimes.
What started as a plea for mercy ended with a brutal reality check from the judge. Throughout the hearing, the defendant tried to convince the court that he deserved another chance, pointing to his upbringing, his education, his military background, and the support of family members and community leaders. But the judge wasn't focused on who the defendant claimed to be. He was focused on what the defendant actually did. And according to the evidence, those actions left multiple innocent people terrified for their lives. The judge carefully walked through the facts of the case, reminding everyone that this wasn't a single mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. One victim was a young woman who was knocked to the ground and had a gun pointed at her head. Another victim was a father standing in front of his small children when he was threatened by an armed robber. The court emphasized that these victims didn't know whether the gun was loaded or not. In those moments, they believed they could die. For them, every second felt like their last. And that's a fear that doesn't simply disappear once the crime is over. Perhaps the most damaging moment came when the defendant attempted to tell the judge that the firearm wasn't loaded. The judge immediately stopped him and read directly from the report showing that the gun contained a magazine loaded with 10 rounds. In that instant, any remaining credibility the defendant may have had seemed to vanish. The judge openly questioned whether the defendant was still trying to deceive the court even while standing moments away from sentencing. It was a critical mistake at the worst possible time. What followed was a powerful statement about responsibility, choices, and consequences. The judge pointed out that the defendant had been given opportunities throughout life that many people never receive. He had an education. He had guidance. He had faith. He had structure. Yet despite all of those advantages, he chose a path that placed innocent people in danger and permanently changed lives. The court made it clear that these crimes were not victimless acts. The emotional scars left behind would likely remain with the victims for years, perhaps for the rest of their lives. In the end, the judge accepted the plea agreement and imposed the maximum sentence allowed under that agreement. 15 years in prison on each case, to be served concurrently. The court also entered a deadly weapon finding, officially recognizing that a firearm was used during the commission of these crimes. For the victims, it was a measure of justice. For the defendant, it was the moment the consequences of his choices became permanent. And for everyone watching, it serves as a reminder that one series of bad decisions can erase years of opportunity and alter countless lives forever.